So last week we talked about goal setting, we talked about skill assessment, and this week we're going to be doing a resume. And this is something that we all have to work on, and some of us have really old resumes that need to be updated. Some of us don't have resumes at all, and we're starting from scratch, and that's okay. We are going to have a lot of information that will help if you are in either camp. So just to give you an agenda of what we're going to go over in this workshop, we have a bunch of different topics, and some of these may really resonate with you, and hopefully they'll be helpful. The first one is showcasing transferable skills gained during the break. So as moms, if you take a step back from your career, you've gained valuable skills during this break. Addressing your employment gaps, what does that look like, and how do you address them on your resume specifically? Up-leveling your resume, so not just how do you build a resume, how do you update it, but how do you even get it to the next level so it's even better and it stands out. Beating the filter bots. There are bots that filter through resumes when you apply online, and so they're going to filter you out unless you know some of the tips and tricks. And then formatting and design tips. So if you were working years and years ago, resumes have changed. And I remember when I went back into the workforce, I had this very dated resume, and so part of re-entry means also updating your resume and the look and feel of it. So I just want to introduce myself for those who weren't here last week. I'm Heather Nemelka, and I had to re-enter the workforce 10 years ago almost, and this happened when my husband filed for divorce. We had been married almost 25 years. I hadn't worked for almost 20 years, and so it was really scary. I'd had an eBay business, but I hadn't actually been in the workforce, and so it was really scary. I had to provide for my family. We had no income. And so I was starting from scratch, and it was a very scary time. And the reason why I'm doing this whole workshop series is because I want to help moms who want to re-entry and re-enter the workforce, because I know what it's like. I know it's like to not have any confidence, to feel like you have no skills, and to really doubt yourself. And one of the biggest challenges I had was I didn't have anybody to show me the way. And certainly there are a lot more resources online now, but I would just love to help moms be able to re-enter and gain confidence. So that's what I'm here to do. All right, so the first area we're going to talk about is showcasing our transferable skills. And if you were here last week, I asked you to make a list of all of the skills and talents you had. And you were going to come back this week having done that. And if you haven't, I encourage you to still do it. And if you are here for the first time, that's going to be one of your homework assignments you'll want to add to your checklist. You're going to make a list of all of the skills and talents and traits that you have. So if you're a really great cook, if you're really great at communicating, and these may be hard skills and soft skills. So think about it, not just hard skills, meaning the skills that are required for a job, like typing 80 words a minute or being able to know some software on the computer, but also your soft skills, which are, having empathy, being able to, encourage and be a really great leader. So those are skills you're going to look at. And I took some time to make a list of all of these different skills that you may not be aware of that you have. Because when I went back to work, I had been a Cub Scout leader, I had been in PTA, but I didn't know if those transferred into anything in the workforce. And depending on what you do in work-wise, you might be thinking you're going to go and be a school teacher, or you may be going into business. It's going to be different, but a lot of these skills still apply. So I'm going to just share a bunch of these to get your mind thinking. So some of the skills you may have acquired are time management, for example. And this is balancing multiple tasks and priorities efficiently. And I know as moms, we all have to do this. Organizational skills, coordinating schedules, events, household activities. That is all organizational skills. Communication, effectively communicating ideas and information to your family and others. Negotiation, settling disputes and finding compromises. I know I did this a lot with my 5 kids. Budgeting, you're managing finances and making economical decisions for your household. Teamwork, collaborating with family members to achieve common goals. Creativity, finding innovative solutions to everyday challenges. Event planning, organizing and coordinating birthday parties and family celebrations. Customer service, attending to the needs and concerns of family members. Delegation, assigning tasks to family members based on strengths. crisis management, health and safety, conflict management, record keeping. There are so many skills that you've acquired. And I'm sure if you Google online and you say, what are some mom skills that transfer to the workforce, you will find even more. But I'm just wanting to give this to you so you have some things to think about. Because I honestly, even though I had a college degree and I had worked, I didn't think I had any skills. Like I really, if you were to say, Heather, what are your skills back, 10 years when I went back to work, I was just like, I can take care of my kids and I can drive and run errands. Like I really didn't think I had any skills. And it took me a little bit of time, but I figured it out and I added it to my resume. So that is kind of the biggest issue I think that people have with their resume is how do I take all the things I've been doing as a mom and put it in my resume so it sounds like it's a real thing and it's not just mom and skill and organizing it that way. So we're going to go over that. You'll learn more, but I just wanted you to start thinking about those transferable skills that you may not have considered or actual skills that you would want for a job. Okay, so addressing employment gaps. So the most important thing with addressing employment gaps are you want to make sure you put it in a positive light. Now, especially in this area in Utah, there are a lot of stay-at-home moms who return to work. And so this is not uncommon. So you may be thinking, oh gosh, they're going to look at that and I'm so embarrassed. It's going to make me look bad because I had this big gap. Do not think of it that way. Moms are the most employable because they've been so organized. They've had to multitask all these years. They're great at communicating. I think that these skills are highly transferable. And the way to address your employment gap is to be very positive. And when you are in an interview or when you're trying to address it to in a cover letter, you would just explain that you had this gap in time when you took a step back for your career. You don't have to say why. You just say, I took a step back from my career. You can say I had to focus on my family, to take care of my aged mother, but you don't have to. And just give all the reasons why this was a positive. It allowed you to focus on other things, be able to build skills in other areas. Just be honest and transparent and emphasize how the skills that you acquired make you a more valuable candidate. So if you took a step back, think about like just being able to emphasize and work with different people, have different life experiences. You may have learned some things online during this time. And that's the other thing I want you to think about when you're addressing your employment gaps. So all of the things that you've been acquiring during this time are skills, talents, traits, etc., that employees will want in their workforce, and you just have to put in a positive light. So the way you do this is format your resume differently. So instead of having your resume look like, I worked at, IBM, ... These are all the things that I did. I worked for Apple Computer, ... whatever. Don't do it that way of chronological order of I did these many years at IBM, these many years at Apple Computer. You're going to do it as experience, work experience, okay? So when I made my resume, I had a job before I became a mom. I had, so I did put that on my resume just to show that I had worked. I put my education, my college education. I put all of the different volunteer things that I did. I did PTA, I did Cub Scouts. I had a section that said volunteer, experiences, ... and I listed that. And then I also was very, I was very careful to make sure that I did put, I didn't put stay-at-home mom. I think I put home and family coordinator, I think is what I said I was. And I think in the last class I said domestic engineer. And I made a list of all of these organization, budgeting, time management, all of these skills I put down. And I also, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, and I quantified those skills, meaning what were the results of all those skills that I learned, okay? So in this addressing of the employment gaps, you're going to have so many things on your resume that you're going to be fine. Don't be worried. So focus on your skills and qualifications rather than chronological work history, all right? You're going to also want to showcase any of your professional development, any courses, certifications that you may have gotten. Did you take an online course? And nowadays there's so many free online courses that if you feel like you need to add some to your resume or just being able to build out your skill set, get online. There are so many free resources nowadays that I didn't even have when I went back to work. So think about those different resources, and you just type into Google, what certification you want, and you can put free if you don't have money for it. And then that will give you a bunch of different options to add to your resume. Mention any freelancing and consultancy. For example, if you are a graphic designer and you helped someone design a garage sale sign. I know that sounds very whatever, but you can say that you freelanced, you helped, you did other things on the side that you may not have thought about. And certainly consulting. So let's say you were giving advice, let's say you're an accountant, or that was what you got your education in, and you were, consulting with someone to help them with their finances and stuff. That's something else. Highlight your accomplishments and achievements in previous roles to draw attention away from the timeline. So don't focus on the timeline, focus on all the skills you have acquired. So, and I'm going to show you my resume in just a bit so you can see what my current resume looks like. And you will be able to see there's lots of things on there that aren't work related. I now have a lot of things that are work related because I've been working for 10 years, but there are a lot of things that are not work related. All right. So up-leveling your resume. So we talked about making sure that you're putting your transferable skills on your resume, and you have all of this content that you're going to be putting on your resume, all of this, lines and lines and lines. And you want to make sure that you are making it really impactful, very valuable, okay? And something I'm telling my team at work all the time is, it's great to have lots of activities. You did this event, you sent out these emails, you delivered these advertisements, etc. That's activities or tactics. That's lots of stuff, and that's great. It shows you've been busy, right? If you made a list of all the things, you could say, but I really want to know what the results are. What did that result in? And so many people with their resumes now, not stay-at-home moms, I'm talking about general public, have a hard time quantifying. That means putting it in tangible results, numbers often. How do you quantify what you did, what you accomplished? So I'm going to give you some examples so you can understand what I'm talking about, all right? So this is the before. Responsible for managing client accounts and ensuring customer satisfaction. This is the after. I want you to pay close attention to what it was that quantified it, okay? Successfully managed a portfolio of 50 client accounts, resulting in a 20% increase in customer satisfaction scores over the course of 6 months. So 50, 20%, 6, those are all numbers, right? Implemented targeted strategies that led to a 15% increase in repeat business and a 10% reduction in customer churn. So when you do things, you may not know exactly what those numbers are, right? Especially if you're trying to transfer, mom skills into work skills, right? Make a guess, get close. I'm sure you can guess. So for example, I did PTA and I was in charge of the book fair. So on my resume, I said, PTA book fair director, okay? I don't know if that was my title, I can't remember, but I put that on. And then for quantifiable, I said increased parent involvement by 20%, because I got volunteer involvement, I think is what I said, not parent involvement, but increased volunteer involvement by 20%, increased sales by 30%. So I remember that the librarian told me how much we had increased our sales. So go back and get close to those numbers again. And another thing that would be quantified is increased student traffic by 10%. So if you know that over year, okay, so those are quantifiable. You're putting a number to each of those things. Those are results. If I just put book fair, PTA, book fair director, and said manage the book fair, what does that really mean? A person reading that would say, oh, they probably had to help raise money for the book fair, Yeah, but if I could say I raised X amount of dollars, or the percentage increase, that's going to be so much more impactful. So think about the ways that, and again, those numbers don't have to be exact. That's why percentage increases are easier than saying, made X amount of, yes, exactly. So think about, again, just, and talk to somebody else. Like if you were involved in a PTA activity and you can't remember, just say, to your friend who you remember doing it with. Say, do you remember what it was? Can you help me remember these things? If you were a homeroom mom, right? You're doing parties and events. You can like talk about that. Did homeroom parties for the school, increased, happiness or whatever I mean, I'm kind of being jokey there, but like, you could talk about participation. So let's say there were some kids that are kind of at the outskirts and they didn't want to participate. You can say that you increased participation by what percentage, okay? So that is up leveling. Okay, now here is a teacher representative. So before and after. So before is developed and implemented lesson plans for high school students. That sounds good, right? But what does that really tell me? It doesn't tell me a ton. Okay, so here is the after. Created and executed comprehensive lesson plans for a diverse group of 150 high school students, resulting in a 15% improvement in overall student performance based on standardized test scores. Implemented innovative teaching methods that increase student engagement by 20%, as evidenced by improved classroom participation and positive student feedback. Another area to uplevel your resume, again, this is presuming you've been out of the workforce for some time, you want to showcase your volunteer and personal projects, okay? Your volunteer work and personal projects. So before might look like volunteered at local community events. I'm sure you guys have been involved in like a fun run or a award activity or things like that, okay? This is the after. Spearheaded and coordinated volunteer initiatives at local community events, demonstrating strong project management and organizational skills. Managed a team of volunteers, oversaw event logistics, and contributed to a percentage increase in community engagement. Okay, that sounds impactful. And this could have been just volunteering at a church activity or something else. But yet you created impact, right? The other thing, in addition to making sure you showcase your volunteer and work projects, okay, or personal projects, is you also want to think about the ways you can uplevel your resume by using action verbs, okay? So anytime that and I'll show you on my resume in just a little bit, anytime you want to say something about what you did, have an action verb, okay? That could be created, developed, managed, organized. Those are action verbs, okay? You are actively doing it. You want to make sure you add that, okay? And this adds, a dynamic piece to your resume, and it also shows you're proactive, you're achieving, okay? You're making forward progress, okay? So, action verbs that you can make a whole list. You could Google, what are some action verbs to use on my resume? Because you don't want to have every, thing say developed, 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 right? So, use a variety of action verbs, okay? Something else that can uplevel your resume, and this is something that not everybody thinks about, but customizing your resume for each job application. This is a pain, I'm not going to lie, okay? But if I were to apply, so I'm in marketing, if I were to apply for a job if normally I would be applying for marketing roles and I'm now trying to apply for a job in education, I would want to choose verbiage, experiences, things like that say I want to be an educator, okay? Think about, again, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Google, you can find the answers within the internet to help you figure that out, okay? And it's the reason why it's important is because the person reading your resume that will potentially hire you or interview you is going to want to know that you really cared enough about that job to customize your resume for that job. And you don't have to customize all of it, right? You're just changing some language here, a little bit there, and so I would sometimes have resumes that said, Heather's resume, and I would put dot, education, dot tech, dot, whatever it is. So I would be able to remember, okay, this is the resume I need to send out if I'm applying for this job, okay? And the other thing that's really important, and we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, is making sure that your resume aligns with the job description, okay? So if the job description you're applying for says, I need someone with strong personal skills, I need someone that's an effective communicator, I need somebody who can type 50 words a minute, whatever it is, that's my typing speed. Yours is probably faster. But you want to make sure your resume takes some of those words in the job description and you just transfer it over to your resume, because they're going to be looking for that. And we'll talk more about the bots, and that's specifically what they're looking for. So, you want to make sure that your resume looks like, if I'm a hiring manager and I'm the one who's potentially going to hire you, I want to be able to read this and go, oh yeah, check, because I remember I made that job description. I'm going to be thinking in my mind, does this person fit those different qualifications? Okay. All right. So beating the filter bots. Now, this is something I didn't know when I started to apply for jobs. Now, because of the internet, oops. Yep, thank you. Now, because of the internet, you can, you can submit a resume online, and then the company that you have applied to will have these filter bots go through, because they get thousands of resumes, thousands, okay? And don't let that discourage you. I'm just telling you that there's a lot. And what they use is a software called Applicant Tracking Systems, or ATS for short, okay? And these tracking systems are, the employer has done is fed into this tracking system the words from the job description that they want to hire for, okay? So if they want to make sure that they're hiring someone who has experience, let's say working with professional athletes, has experience coaching, something like that, those words in the job description better be in your resume, because if not, these trackers, these bots, will automatically spit you out. You won't even have a chance. And so when you look at the job description, you're going to try to find as many keywords in that job description that you can put into your resume. They're not all going to be there. And hiring managers don't expect to have their perfect employee, perfect applicant to become their employee. They're going to put a lot of things on their wish list. Okay? I know when I hire, I would love to, I put my wish list, my dream person as the job description, okay? But you're going to want to make sure that if it says anything in that job description, especially the ones that when it says in the job description qualifications, if these are the things that are going to qualify you for this job, you really need to have them in your resume, okay? Now, women in general don't have a lot of confidence, and they often think less of themselves, and they don't think they're qualified for these bigger roles, okay? Men, on the other hand, will apply and they'll shoot for the moon, and they'll get hired for jobs that are above their abilities. But women often will just apply for what they think they can get. Now, I'm not trying to encourage you to go out and apply for these VP of marketing job or something, but I want you to think, can I apply for these other jobs? I may not have all of the qualifications, but could I sell myself in a resume? I mean, not a resume, in an interview or in the cover letter. Can I sell myself well enough that they will at least give me an interview? Okay. The thing that's tricky is you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself in the best possible light, and you don't want to be dishonest, but we often hold back. We don't think we can do what we really can do. Now, last week, I explained that when I went back to work, I applied. I hadn't yet really applied, but I got a job as a marketing coordinator. And marketing coordinator is the job that you get when you're fresh out of college. You are a marketing coordinator or a specialist. And that's the job I got as a 40-something-year-old mom returning to work. But I was thrilled because they hired me for something. And if you are skilled, hardworking, your company that you have been hired for will recognize it and they will promote you. And I got promoted the next year to manager. And the year after that, I moved to a different company and I got a job as a director, or excuse me, senior manager. and then director. So if you're showing that you're a hard worker, you are doing all the work, and you're asking for more work, and you're asking to do things that maybe are out of your job description, they're going to see you as somebody who's a really valuable employee, and they're going to want to give you more responsibilities. They're going to want to give you those higher level jobs, and the pay will increase over time as well. So when I first started as a marketing coordinator, I wasn't making very much money. And it was hard because I thought, oh my goodness, I was cutting coupons and I was cutting back in every area that I could because I wasn't making very much money. And that was okay because I knew I was going to work hard enough that they would give me, a pay increase, and that I could potentially move up in the company. So make sure that you are filtering out for those bots with keywords, and make sure that when you're applying for these jobs, you give yourself a little bit more credit than you normally would. And make sure that you're also thinking about ways that you can do more in the job to be able to get you to that next role that you want to get. So I also want to talk to you about formatting and design tips, right? So like I said, when I first applied back into the workforce, the resume that I'd had years ago was outdated. It was just so different. Resumes, the formatting, everything changes over time. And when I recently started to look for a different job, resumes had changed even more since I had applied for a job, just a few years before that. So this is the front and back of my current resume. No, I guess this is an old one, sorry. But it looks like it's the same format as my current resume. So it gives you an idea of how I have formatted it to be much more contemporary. It's not just line, line, line. There's some interest. So these different sections create interest. So if you can think about your resume as a way to make areas stand out, that's why I've done what I've done, okay? So I have Heather Nemelka, and I just put in this box, big thinker, because I want them to know that I'm thinking big. I'm trying to help the company, right? Here on the side, I have my contact information, and you always want to make sure you have your contact information that's updated. So if you have an old resume, make sure you go in and you update all of that information. So when I first started going back to work, I only had a phone number and an email. I didn't have a LinkedIn profile, which is what this is here. So there are ways to up-level your resume too with different, icons and things like that. So on the left here, because you can't see it, it's so small, and this is my front page. I have education listed on the far left, okay? And then below it, I have key skills, right? So my education and then key skills, and these are some of the key skills I'll read to you. Marketing strategy, data and analytics, communication, demand generation, leadership, project management, etc. And a lot of these words are words that are in the job descriptions for marketing roles. So I want to make sure that I have those. So if you make a list of your key skills, you don't have to set up your resume as I've done it, but I want you to set up sections of your resume like that, all right? Budget analysis, like these are things that the job is going to want me to show as skills, right? So again, if you are changing your resume to meet the needs or the requirements of a job and you're changing it each time, this is a great start. Put the keywords right there in the skills. And be honest, if you don't have the skills, you don't have the skills, but I bet you have a lot of those skills and you don't even realize it, okay? What you also want to do in a resume, and this is for all resumes, is put your professional profile or your statement at the top. And it's basically a summary of what you want to accomplish in the job that you're trying to apply for, okay? Tells a little bit about yourself. It gives them a taste of who you are. And it's the first thing they're going to read before they even check to see what experience I have, right? So it says dynamic, high energy, motivated professional with a mind for innovation and a passion for building and coaching high performing teams. That's still what I do. I love that. Combines executive MBA learnings with solid marketing and project management experience to define strategic, data-driven solutions and blah, blah, blah. All right. I now that you have ChatGPT, which is a AI tool that we can all access for free, and it may seem a little scary and daunting if you've not used it, but you could say, I'm applying for this type of a job. I need a professional statement for my resume. Give me an example. And then it'll spit it out, and then you want to change it so it sounds like you. Okay? You never want to use an AI tool without making changes to it so that it sounds like you. All right? So then after that, professional statement of who I am, what I want to do, and what I can bring to the company. It's like, oh, right? It's experience. Do you see work or job there? No, I have experience on my resume. I never put work or jobs anymore. It's experience, okay? Now, when I first did this, when I was returning to the workforce, experience wasn't a lot of jobs. They were volunteer experience, or like the domestic engineer or home organizer as a stay-at-home mom. That's what it looked like. It was experience. It's all experience. You're experiencing things every single day. But now I have my job, and then I have these bullets that give metrics, etc. And then over here on the back side, I have noteworthy activities and achievements. Okay, you are going to have had noteworthy activities and achievements that happened before you became a stay-at-home mom that might be really relevant and important. So, for example, I got a Utah Advertising Federation scholarship back when I was in college. That's a big deal. So I put it on my resume. It doesn't matter that I'm now much older. I had to get a scholarship for school, and it shows something. All right. I have some other scholarships here that I listed here. I have Boy Scouts of America, Cub, Wolf, Webelos, Den Leader in the years that I did it. That's important. That is experience. Okay. Reflections Program Director, Provo School District in the years. Canyon Crest Community Council, Chairman of the Board. So I have all of these noteworthy activities and achievements that happened when I was a mom. Okay? And if I'm an employer looking at somebody's resume, this would tell me that, wow, this mom still was striving. She still was doing activities. She was helping the community. She was helping with her family. And so really think and talk to your friends, family, and ask them to remind you too of what you did, because sometimes we forget that these are things we did years ago. And if you feel uncomfortable about adding the years, then just put what it was what you did. You don't even have to put the years, because if you're feeling like, oh, that was so long ago, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to put that, that's okay. Just list what your activities and achievements were. Okay. So this is all of, additional experience. Now this is 10 years worth of doing a resume. Well, actually some more, because this is out of date. But I have here, these two jobs happened before I became a mom. I have those. And then this was when I was in eBay. I was an eBay seller. I have that there. Okay. So it's not all current. And what you're trying to do is you're just trying to get the interview. You're not trying to get the job with your resume. I mean, that would be great if they saw your resume and called you up and said, I want to hire you. You are just using your resume to get the interview. It's a first step. So if there are employment gaps on your resume, you're going to make sure that you have them organized in such a way. So right now, how I have my noteworthy activities and achievements on the far left, because I have a lot of job experience now, you'd want to put those across, okay? So they would just be here. Again, we're not going to do a chronological resume if you don't have a lot of work experience. You're going to just have experience and just list and list. You don't have to worry about making it amazing, because at first it's not. I wish I could have found, I did try to look for my old resume that I used when I first went back to work, and I'm going to still look for it, because it's just that it didn't have very much on it. The other thing I would encourage you to do during this time as you're thinking about going back to work is, when you can, and I know you're busy moms, there's not a lot of time, but start trying to find volunteer and community opportunities right now. Because it just shows that you're putting yourself out there, that you want to learn, that you want to grow. Because when I hire individuals, I like to see that they're always trying to develop themselves a little bit more. They're trying to give back. Those are qualities that I want in someone that I'm going to hire. And again, the keywords from, remember with the bots, you're going to make sure you put the keywords in throughout your resume so that you can filter them out. And there's a lot more information about that specifically that we could go over, but we don't have time in this session. But definitely make your resume stand out by visually making it look great. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, this is a template I got on Etsy. I paid, I think, $5 for my template. You do not have to know how to be a designer. I'm not a designer. I hire designers because I don't know I'm not a great designer. This is just an Etsy template. I saw a bunch of different examples. I typed in resume template. I think I put resume template for marketer or something. And it gave me a bunch of different resume templates. And I looked and I thought, oh, I like how this one looks visually. And that's how I chose it. And I changed a little bit of the fonts and things like that. But for the most part, I used a template. So I want to make sure I shared that with you too. Make sure you allow for white space too on your resume. So this has a lot of content in it. But when you normally would do a resume without a lot of job and work experience, you'd have more white space, and that is fine because the white space actually helps a hiring manager see things and identify. It makes it stand out more. So don't worry that there's going to be some white space because that's normal, right? The other thing I did point out was my LinkedIn profile. Now, LinkedIn is the social media platform for people in the workforce, typically in business, but I can see educators in there as well. And we're going to talk next week about creating your LinkedIn profile. And this is going to be very important, not only for you to just put yourself out there, but so you can be found. So employers can find you on LinkedIn and they can email you and say, hey, I saw you were on LinkedIn. You have some qualifications that fit a job role that I'm hiring for. I'd love to interview you. So we'll talk more about that next week, which is going to be super important. But make sure that you have an online presence. So you could also put on there if you care to. You could put if you have a blog, like let's say you have a family blog that you do or something like that, because then they can see your writing skills. I probably wouldn't put my Instagram and Facebook unless you feel like it's like if you were a designer, or if you were going into design or social media or marketing, yes, you would want to put it because it shows that you know how to market yourself on these social platforms. So definitely something to consider. So remember that you're doing this not to get the job. The resume is not to get the job, it's to get the interview. And you're also going to have to write a cover letter. And we didn't have time to go over the cover letters, but that's another area where you are writing a letter to the hiring manager, letting them know why you think you'd be the best person for that job, and that you'd feel grateful for a conversation. And there's lots of resources and tools online to teach you about how to write a cover letter as well. And the cover letters, if you don't want to change your resume for different jobs, the cover letter for sure is what you want to adjust for the jobs. You're going to speak to them as if you want to put the company name in the cover letter every single time. And we're going to talk more about actually applying for jobs at another date, but I wanted to make sure I left you with the key takeaways, all right? So frame career gaps positively. If you get into an interview, you're not going to say, I was just a sales mom, I know, No, you're just like, you are confident. You say, I learned all these skills. I was able to contribute to my community. That is very important to be very positive. Utilize a functional resume format, which is what I was telling you about, putting experience, not having it be chronological by jobs of what you've done, because you can just list your experience over time. And then quantify achievements for impact, like putting numbers to what you did. You don't have to, but it just up levels your resume so much more. And tailoring the resume to include phrases specified in the job posting so you won't be filtered out for bots, okay? Because you will literally have put all this work into an application and you won't get hired or interviewed because they didn't even look at it. That's what they do nowadays. I love this quote. I always try to include a quote, and last week's quote I loved, but this one I love as well, from Eleanor Roosevelt. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Returning to work is hard. It takes courage. That's why the company, Braven has 2 V's. You have to be doubly brave. And it's because it gets us out of our comfort zone. We aren't naturally going to put ourselves out there. I may look confident now and I have experience working now, but if you guys could see me, I was so scared. I was so nervous. I was shy. I was not who I am today. And it took courage. And when I say it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be so worth it. And you're going to grow in ways that you never thought you would. And I wanted to leave with you a picture of my kids. And this is my son-in-law and my daughter are the ones in the front, and my other kids are in the back. So I have 5 kids. And when I got divorced, my kids were all at home. They were little, and it was hard. And now they've grown up, and they have all gone to college, and they are hardworking, and they are happy. And the thing I want to impress upon you is your family will be okay. They will be fine. And depending on your situation, I don't know if you have to work because you're divorced, or you don't have a partner or spouse to help you, or you are going back to work because your kids are all grown up, or they're all in school, and you're like, I have time. I want to develop myself now. Your kids will be fine. And my kids, it's interesting, my kids are more independent. They are self-sufficient. They appreciate me so much more. So when I when I would come home from work and I would cook dinner and stuff, and I would make them dessert, like, so I didn't get a chance to bake cookies for them after school. Mom, thank you so much. This is so great. Whereas before they're like, mac and cheese again? Are you serious, Mom? They came to appreciate me. And I learned that, wow, like going back to work had a lot of pluses and positive outcomes for my family and my children. They also got to see what it's like to see a strong woman developing herself and contributing to society. And I think that's important for kids to see. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom, and her mom was a stay-at-home mom. And my mom went back to work after I was grown up, and I got to see my mom being so strong, and what a great example that was for me. So going back to work is going to be hard, and it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be so worth it. I love doing this because I want to help moms return to the workforce, because I didn't have anybody to guide me. So the way that you can help me is, I'd love to get the word out. I just do this because I want to help moms. So if you can, I have the website is braven.com with 2 V's, so BRAVVEN.com. It's a work in progress. I am just setting up the newsletter, so it says if you want to join the newsletter, and it says information, it's not fully functioning there yet, but it will be. And then social media is at Be Braven, because Braven with 2 V's is taken, and Be Brave and everything's taken, so it's Be Braven. And follow me, and encourage your friends to follow too, because even if they're in the workforce, the more people that I can get seen Braven, the more people talk about it, and that's my goal. And so I said last week that I would love to just teach as many as I can. If I teach 5 and help them return to work, that's great. But if I could help 500, that would be even better. And eventually I want to make an internship program. And there's so many I have a big vision for Braven, but it's going to take, baby steps, little every time. And I'm also going to be putting these workshops online and have them be recordings. And it's just taken me a little bit of time because I have a full-time job and I do this on the side. And so hopefully I'll be able to get that up quickly, so those that don't live here in Utah can actually watch and learn as well.